Bionicle Heroes GBA, I'm telling you, it's amazing, and I loved it.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the TTV Modcast, episode 23. Oh yeah, numbers.
Do you know what 23 is? 23 is the number 23.
That's true. Also, if you take 23 and you add 6, and then you subtract 6, it's still 23.
That is also a true fact. I am amazed by that true fact.
It's amazing. Speaking of names, though, what are our names?
What are we?
Yeah, what are we? Well, I'm a Wudge.
I'm a slime.
I'm Smat Jargon Esquire.
I am a Lego Master.
I'm an indie.
And here we are, once more.
Another perfect intro.
We have flawless introductions.
And speaking of flawless introductions, you know what are we talking about today? We're talking about MNOG!
Oh,
Hey!
snap. Oh.
A flawless
Yeah.
introduction to the Bionicle franchise right there.
Our never-ending series, it'll never die, talking about Bionicle. Who knows what it's at right now?
How many parts are there? I'm actually gonna count.
No, it's an infinology. It'll never end, Slime. We did talk about Bionicle games in an episode, but we didn't really talk about MNOG all too much. We were more focused on console games instead of web games.
We also briefly mentioned MNOG in episode 11, so if you're interested in those, check them out. Hashtag not so subtle plug.
So yeah, MNOG, more commonly known as the Mata Nui Online game, is a online game where you explore Mata Nui.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. Well, it's a point-and-click game, which is really cool. It seems nowadays that genre of game just isn't as prevalent. It seems like more of a product of the time back in the early 2000s where that kind of game was still played more.
I mean, there's like the Walking Dead game and stuff, you know.
I haven't played any of those.
I haven't either, I just know that people like them.
They seem to be much more prevalent back in like the early 2000s, or I guess late 90s. What was Myst?
93.
Oh, snap. I think the thing about MNOG and what makes that gameplay work is that there's a huge mystery element to everything with Bionicle G1. And I think the fact that things are sort of discontinuous, like the locations that you visit, you know, you're never sure where you're gonna end up when you click. It's always a big mystery, and I think it really enhances that aspect of the first generation. And also there's just a whole lot of other things, like the cutscenes, which were just beautiful.
They were great.
I feel like the point-and-click adventure games in general, from what I know, are often built off of the ideal of mystery, because it really works well for that, because it's not really a fast-paced, like, combat sort of scenario. It's more of a go at your own pace, discover stuff, explore, all of that.
Mini games. Attack the Rocky.
Okay, there were only, like, what, 2 of those? 1 of those?
There's
in
3
MNOG?
mini games. They're,
Oh,
they're,
yeah,
well, they don't involve combat, but there's the one where you're kicking holders as Pohatu. There's the one where you're flying on a bird. I can't remember what they're
Kiwa.
called.
No, not a Kiwa. It's a...
Taco.
It's not a Gecko.
It is a gecko. Well,
It's
it
not
got
a
rid
gecko.
kinda into a gecko.
What?
Close enough to our purposes.
What?
For our purposes.
Yes.
No, no, no,
Yes.
no, 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 no. I'm
Tahu.
refusing to believe
Kahu, I
that.
think, right? Kahu, maybe?
That's a Tahu.
And then the third one is
The big battle
right
thing.
before you go underground. Yeah.
When did you guys originally play MNOG? If you have, I'm curious.
I played it well after it first came out, because they kept it up on the site for a very long time.
They did.
I think I played it probably first around 2005, 2006,
Okay.
maybe also 2007. Like I said in the other episode that we were talking about this, I never actually officially completed the game. What I did was, I'm sure you guys remember the little book that could
Oh,
take
yeah.
you to the different chapters of the game. I just did that. Effectively, I just skipped to the different parts. I'll play for like a little bit, and then I would get stuck, and then I'd just be like, well, I'm moving on to the next part.
I played it pretty early on. I was probably like late 2002, early 2003. I remember like dial-up and stuff on my internet when we were playing it. And like, it was me and my neighbor. It took us like an entire week to finish MNOG because we'd do something, we'd make sure we did it right, we'd click and we wait for it to load, and we go grab like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and we wait for like the screen to fully load. And it took like probably 5 minutes for each screen.
My exposure to MNOG was back in, I think, 2003, but it might have been earlier. It was on Windows 98. It was one of the first games that I ever played on a computer, aside from, like, Freddy the Fish. It was quite cool to explore this world, but I did not get very far. I think the farthest I might have gone was like Powahi.
I distinctively played MNOG for the first time after Mask of Light came out, because I remember me and my neighbor, we were playing it through, and like every time we saw someone, we'd be like, oh my god, that's Jala from the movie. And then like the entire time we were like, where's Takua? And then like the very end, when like the elevator comes down, we looked at each other, we were like, oh, it was like the craziest plot twist ever for us as like little kids.
That is something really cool about how you don't see who you're playing as until the very, very end.
I mean, I'm sure you could kind of piece it together based on how they would call you the chronicler the entire time. I respect MNOG a lot for this, that like, it's clear the point of MNOG wasn't to sell toys, because the concentrated effort of MNOG was to center the little McDonald's toys that they had. It wasn't like we were playing as the toys that you buy. It was like you were playing as just something random. I kind of respect that. So I'm sure if that was made like today, it'd be all about like, oh look, you're playing as Tahu and he can shoot things from his lava board, and just be like, you know what I mean? You're playing as the tiny guys. I think that was a really cool choice.
There's sort of a feeling of not being very powerful. You're just a wanderer, and things could happen. You don't know if there are battle scenarios.
In the grand scheme of things in MNOG, you aren't really doing anything significant. That's the important thing. You're kind of a bystander. Like, really, what did you do as a character other than kind of like just help out? Pohatu defeated the nest thing, and like you got to view it all, but you weren't the one doing it, you know? Which I thought was kind of cool.
You were still kind of being an active part of the Matoran community. You were helping your friends, you were accomplishing different tasks. You weren't like, a massive hero who was like doing all of these super larger than life heroic things, but you were just a regular guy kind of making his way in the universe, As I think people have mentioned before, that really helped to build up the mythos of the Toa, because even though, like, looking back on it, the Mata Toa, objectively, as far as appearance goes, are really scrawny. They don't look extremely heroic.
No, you're right.
But I think what MNOG did in putting you in that very small character, I mean, it was a central theme throughout Bionicle, especially in the earlier years. The Matoran, they were a very developed society, but they couldn't fully defend themselves. They needed the Toa as heroes, and so they looked up to the Toa, both figuratively and literally. So that kind of really helped to build up the mythos of who the Toa were as these heroes, much better than, like, say, I think G2 did it.
I also liked how we just got kind of like tiny snippets of each of the Toa. I know we were actually supposed to get more of Anua in the game. They cut some stuff out with that. I've heard things about this, but like, we got just kind of like a couple minutes of each of the Toa. And let me tell you, they covered stuff like the Liwa versus Anua fight in such a cool way in that game. Such a memorable thing.
It shows the Toa using all of the mask's powers that they've collected. Like, every other Bionicle media never, ever, ever shows changing masks. That's something that's exclusive to MNOG, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're correct, yeah.
And that was the whole point of 2001, was collect all the masks. So you could use all the powers, including the Turaga powers, the noble masks.
I loved that.
Your Toa has, in addition to their element, 12 different powers that they can use, and that's awesome.
It makes the battle scenes just more entertaining, just to see what they might do, because they have so many options.
They did a good job of updating that as they went on. Like, if you think about it, take each of the scenarios where we saw the Toa, like the Tahu one. You didn't even see Tahu. It was more of just kind of a silhouette of Tahu. Do you know what I mean? Like, when he was encountering Jala, it wasn't like the full MNOG style Tahu. And then later you see Gali, and like, even then, she doesn't look the same as she does like at the end of MNOG. And she just kind of fights and boxes a bit. Then Pohatu, he uses his mass power. That's the next one. You're like, oh, well, they have mass powers. And then finally, we see a couple of mass powers when Anua is doing his thing against Liwa. And then finally, Kopaka goes all out, and he just does a ton of them against the Maka. And then finally, the final battle, it's like insane when it comes to the mass powers being used. That was such a satisfying ending, I thought.
Yeah, the ending of MNOG is probably one of my favorites. Even though I have not finished the game on my own, I did watch MNOG with Meso. Pretty sure I'd seen that scene before. Maybe I just didn't know that was the end of that game. But seeing it was like, oh, this is fantastic. Because it's like, so it was released back in, 2001? I forget. Like,
hang on, keep talking.
Because it was like a really good way to set up the next wave of sets.
The final chapter of MNOG came out December 15th, I believe, of 2001. So that, like, literally, it's like, it was such a good, and then, like, we get that Bo-Rock kind of hint, and then right there, Bo-Rock at the shelves,
Yeah, and it's like, that is just spectacular. They're setting this thing up for the hardcore fans. It's like, then they have this insider info on the
The
next
kind of thing coming.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting from a developer standpoint as well, because MNOG was being released chapter by chapter. We didn't start getting hints of the Bohrok until August 18th, being the Lewahi chapter. Before that, there are no hints anywhere of like the text anywhere.
What about the telescope?
Fun fact, I know this because we worked on MNOG 1.5, but like the telescope, I believe it changed each month, if that makes any sense.
Wait, what?
I think it did.
Like they added on parts to it?
I think so.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
I remember reading something similar. Like they added one constellation at a time, I think.
That's what I thought. Yeah, I know the constellations changed based off the chapter you were in, but I don't remember if the carving itself was updated or if it stayed the same.
The telescope, as someone who was coming from playing this game much after it was released, seeing the telescope was like, whoa,
Yeah.
look at all these things, and I'm all the way up here, and some of these still don't even make any sense. And they didn't make any sense until like the very last year.
I did like the telescope things because people always say that like some of them had possibly foreshadowings to the robot and stuff, which I thought was really, really neat.
Well, yeah, like one of them is literally the Mata Nui robot's face.
No, it is, yeah, which is really, really cool. And as we know from Faber, that was planned since the beginning. So like that's always really cool.
It's just really cool because you see just how long in advance they had planned everything.
Also in Onu Wahi, when they're mining and they run into an impenetrable layer, that's supposed to be they've run into Mata Nui's face.
Yeah, and I think that was honestly like an intentional thing.
That's how they get into Metru Nui, right?
Is it? All I know is that the last kind of foreshadowing to future stuff was in, I can't find a picture right now, but Nixie's hut, or I suppose she wasn't known as Nixie back then, the like astrologer, has a map on the wall, and it's like, it's a planet being orbited by 2 smaller moons.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which, I don't know, that might not be intentional, honestly, because I don't think they even had that concept planned out yet, the whole Bar Magna thing. But like, yeah, it's still kind of cool.
Wouldn't that just be a reference to like the Unity Duty Destiny symbol? Though?
It could also be that, yeah. But like, they weren't like positioned like that, though, if that makes any sense. This is another thing I was going to bring up. This screenshot right here from the game, I thought was one of the coolest moments in the game. Like, you kind of just randomly walk out of the woods and they all just kind of turned to you and they're like, sup? And it was like such a shocking thing. I remember you're like, whoa. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, up till this point, you've seen the Toa individually, barring Liwa and Niwa. But now it's like all of them. You're like, whoa, powerhouse.
They definitely build up the Toa a lot in that game. It was cool that they did that.
It is really amazing the way they do. Can I talk about something else that I absolutely love about MNOG? The art style. It's so cool. And I really love that G2, the animations, they say they took inspiration from it. I don't really see it as much. I like that style as well, but it's so simple and yet so iconic and just good. I don't even know really how else to describe it. It's just like...
And it got polished a lot, because like, if you look, a lot of the art that goes on in like the first couple chapters of MNOG is not as good as the later chapters. Like, just some of the ways the Matoran are drawn and stuff. Here's an example right here. Just like, you can definitely tell there's a difference. But I think it really, really got polished when it came to the Bohrok animations in MNOG 2. Like, that's when it became really good, I thought.
Oh yeah. Also, the thing about it is that, like, during that time, other point-and-click adventure games were, like, either fully 3D, or, like, that early 3D, or 2D, 16 or 32-bit. So this art style really made the world a lot more nicer to look at, as well explore. A lot of games like the early point-and-click adventures were kind of hideous to look at. Like, MNOG really, I think that art style just worked really well.
This kind of stuff just has like so much detail in it, and like it just looks good. Like, I like kind of the mossy rock stuff they did. I also like the way they kind of incorporated that, like, the land was all organic, but like the tools and stuff around us were made of Lego parts. And it was kind of subtle. Like, it didn't look bad. It didn't like stand out. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Like, some of the underwater urchins kind of look like gears, almost.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it's like, oh, that's a nice touch that they do. Really taking that biomechanical aesthetic and just running with it.
There are Lego games, one I can think of in particular, Lego Harry Potter, where like they tried to make the game look really natural, but the Lego parts just stick out. You know what I mean? Like, this game, I thought that like kind of the machinery and stuff kind of just fit into the world. It worked.
I feel like the problem with games like Lego Harry Potter, if I remember right, it's the engine that they use. And that engine is so much better than, like, say, the original one they were using for the original Lego Star Wars games. I don't know if you guys remember those.
Mhm.
But as I believe Kahi brought this up on the message board several times when it came to the new Force Awakens game, and I'm pretty sure the same problem affects most of the other games made with that engine, is that there's so much shininess. It looks like real Lego, but the blend with the more realistic parts just make everything look off.
No, definitely.
Whereas with MNOG, they kind of abstracted things a lot. Like, the parts are still clearly recognizable, but they kind of transitioned them into their own style instead of trying to really capture every single detail of the Lego pieces and then melding that with reality.
Right.
yeah.
It's not trying to take plastic and make it real. It's just taking everything and making it flat. It's consistent with the art style, and that's something I really appreciate because it doesn't look out of place, like you said. It's like it looks like it belongs.
Yeah.
One thing that I was thinking about is, would MNOG's art style work with any other kind of chapter in Bionicle's history?
Metru Nui, certainly.
I've heard of there being a Mata Nui Online game.
I haven't tried it myself.
Yeah, it's
but
fan made.
Is it that art style? I know nothing about it. Does it try and emulate that?
Yes, it does. It does.
It does, but it's kind of this. It's like that.
Oh, okay then.
That's Metru Nui?
That wasn't the best picture to grab, but essentially, yes.
Okay. I don't know, because I really, really like Metru Nui, and I just think that would look really cool. Or that would be cool to explore. I feel like with Metru Nui's very urban kind of, like, it has a mix of a lot of interesting, well, I'm just really basing this off of the commercials that we got. Was Ghost making the commercials back then?
Yes, they were.
Okay, yeah, because, like, I really loved lots of the Metru Nui promotional material we got, and that had kind of this atmosphere of, like, urban but also shadowy, sort of a mix of that. And MNOG's style is very, very bright, so either they would have to readjust the color palette completely, or just go with a bit of a different tone for 2004, I find.
Templar did Vaki animations.
The Vaki animation, I was just about to bring that up. They did that, and it was fine. It was like the same art style. I could see like 2007 working with MNOG possibly.
I could see 2006 working very well just because it's the same idea of you're on an island, and that's where, like, you think of Vinog, and it's not the same style, but it's similar in a lot of aspects.
Yeah.
Where it's kind of like that abstracted style. On the topic of Metru Nui, I just wanted to point out, you guys remember those discs that had like the mini games on them and all that? Those had their own style, and I feel like that worked really, really well
I
with
agree.
Metru Nui's. So I don't know how much I would... If Metru Nui was done in a MNOG type style, I'm sure I would enjoy that, but I don't know. I feel like this style, for what it was fine. The music of MNOG was great. I just want to point that out. Actually, right before we were recording this, I was re-listening to a lot of the music, and a lot of the earliest stuff is kind of a little bit choppy.
I really wish we had higher quality sound files.
Yeah, same.
Someone ought to reorchestrate that stuff, yeah.
If anyone out there wants to reorchestrate MNOG, call us, and then we'll take credit for it. We'll promote it, because you'll definitely have problems with promoting it, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely.
The thing about reorchestrating it, though, is that you'd have to have the same kind of music. What would you even define MNOG's music as being, as far as like a genre? It's kind of tribally, but it's also kind of technical.
Techno world music.
Is that an actual genre?
No.
It's so unique and very fitting. It's a mixture of tribal stuff, electronic stuff, which fits perfectly because it's a biomechanical world. It's like a mixture of organic and non-organic, which is something they kind of lose later on in the series.
There was a lot of care put into a lot of facets of the design of MNOG. A whole lot of effort was put into it. Like the cereal box CDs, it's like comparatively, well, even those did have like elements of world building. They're mainly just like mini games, but MNOG really seemed like something that was not aimed to necessarily sell you on the toys. Like, it sold you on the world and the mythos and lore of Bionicle. At the same time, probably selling people on the toys as well. But I think the primary focus seemed to be just to make an awesome game.
That's like the whole backstory behind it, was that like there was the movie planned and like the other stuff planned that Lego was like, oh, we'll focus on that. And, you know, Templar Studios over here, you know, you just do your own thing, do whatever, like we don't care. And then it turns out that that was the only thing that ever like came to fruition. And so you can totally tell that difference where this was not a game that was like, all right, if this doesn't succeed, Bionicle is doomed. All right, guys, you know, get us some sets, you know, come on. Sorry, I have to go into the Lego executive voice here. Come on, $10 Studios, making some money.
Oh my god.
You can totally tell the difference where, like you're saying, it wasn't designed to sell sets, although it certainly did. It was just designed to be a thing. And that arguably is something that I think a lot more toys and systems in general should focus on.
I think that approach is really the winning approach for anything, really. It's like to make the product the best it can be, instead of just making it a marketing vehicle, it'll actually have longevity. People will still probably play MNOG today, you know? It's like, it holds people's attention far longer than massive creation.
It's inspired some people to try making fan games only to, drop them a couple years later.
Speaking of fan games, that MNOG 1.5!
Ugh.
For those
Yes.
people who don't know, what is MNOG 1.5?
Well, MNOG 1.5 are all of my gathered dreams and hopes crushed together and buried under the ground. That's what MNOG 1.5 is. No, MNOG 1.5 is a fan game that me and a associate of mine, Nuparo77, created that basically tries to create a MNOG game based off the 2002 storyline. We got some progress on it. We had some good stuff in there, but it died. Stop asking when it's coming back. It's not. Unlike a certain channel I know, I'm not going to tell you that MNOG 1.5 is on a hiatus. It's gone, and it's not coming back. So, there you go.
I played it for the first time. It was after I met you. And then I was like, oh, there's MNOG 1.5 that Indi does. I'll check that out. And I checked it out, and I was like, whoa, this is actually, really legit.
See, I won't take credit for a lot of it because what happened was Zupara was really, really good at coding and stuff, where I was kind of the main person feeding him ideas and, inspiration and stuff, because, he wasn't too familiar with the lore and stuff, and I had to kind of point him in the right direction with that stuff. So it was mostly, me kind of planning stuff and then him doing the hard work.
But still, it was apart from the language.
Oh, yeah, I know. I was working on that.
Yeah, the typos were real.
They were. And we had a big debate, actually. It lasted a few hours, I remember, whether we wanted to spell certain characters' names with the spelling before the Mori incident or after.
I spell them as, Huki versus Huki.
Exactly. I think we settled on before the incident because we thought that was more faithful. Still to this day, I think the 2002 story was one of the most overlooked stories in terms of, we didn't get a lot of content for it. I think it's one of the coolest years of concept, and we got a book, and that was about it. There's not much to it, and I thought that was really cool because it meant that when it came to making a game, there was a lot of stuff you could work with and add if you wanted to, because really we didn't get a lot of storyline from 2002.
There's the Bow-Rock animations.
There are, but even those, it's what do they tell us? They tell us that it shows the building of the Boxer, and then it doesn't even show Liwa being uncorrupted. It doesn't even show Liwa corrupted, I don't think. The highlights are an attack on Pokoro, the building of the Boxers, and then the final attack on Gakoro. We never see the Toa fighting the Barag. We never see the Exo Toa. We never see any of that. And I thought that was kind of a bummer. And so there was actually a lot of cool ideas we had. I know one of them that we really, really wanted to do, we were super excited, was that another victim of the Karana stuff was going to be Kapura. I was really excited for that. We had a lot of stuff planned for that. And then we were writing an Akmu redemption mini arc because in MNOG 2, he's present in the village, whereas he was he left after the whole Nui Jaga thing. So that was cool.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I just really wanted to see the Barag confrontation on screen.
It's always cool to see what people do to try and fill in the gaps of stories. The details on a story can be vague on how certain events connect, or maybe a character is off screen for a while and it's oh, what are they doing? They're having their own adventures. There's one guy, Pereki, that's doing this really cool thing. Trial by Tahu. It is a short film within that style.
MNOG was good at a lot of things, but something I don't think it was very good at was comedy. The Borak animations had some comedy in them, and I thought that was alright, but other than that, I don't know. But one of my favorite parts in that thing was when he's talking about the other Toa and he's ranting about each of them. He wears all their masks and he turns to Pohatu and he just the music stops. He's Pohatu's fine, and then he just he just keeps going because he turned to I'm what's he gonna say about Pohatu? I don't think there's any. And then it got me. As someone whose favorite Toa is Pohatu, that really got me. That was funny.
It was super cool to see that in between sort of story take place. It's fanfiction come to life. It's so good. You could mistake it for the official style, which is just superb. If you have not watched Trial by Tahu, just go watch it.
Not to mention the other ones too. Escape from Kokoro with
those ones are great. Oh,
Kopaka, and then there's Liwa and the Rama, which is Shorter, but still pretty good. Does anyone have any last thoughts
Yeah.
on MNOG?
It's really good. You should play it if you haven't.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Don't be like Meso. Play MNOG 1.5, especially because I'm making wide assumptions here, but I'm guessing the 7 people that watch us, which thank you for watching us. I'm guessing that a lot of the people who are watching us are a little younger than the average people who were around when MNOG was around. So if you haven't played MNOG, it's on Biomedia Project. Go and give it a shot. It's really cool.
I would go so far as to say it's the only completely good Bionicle game ever made.
MNOG is great. You should all check it out. If you recently watched Journey to One and you want something to cleanse your health with,
Your bleached eyes.
go check out MNOG. Or go check out Pereki.
Also, check out the progress made on MNOG 1.5 because I want to get your hopes up and break them.
Go ahead and play MNOG 1.5 too. Play the 2 chapters that are around. It's fun for what it is.
It is. Thank you.
Probably.
Thank you, Slime.
Yay, that was the Modcast. So goodbye, everyone.